Well, hello there. Jonathan Foust here, and welcome to this webcast. It's nice to be doing a live stream webcast rather than archives. Got a fresh talk for you. I'm really glad you're here. A couple things before we launch into a short meditation and then into our talk. First of all, again, thanks for being here. I'd like to thank Rita Moran, our mindful movement teacher. If you'd like to join Rita for mindful movement at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, her class will bring you right up to here, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. You can find the link for her class on my website and on my Facebook page. Also, to the Insight Meditation Community of Washington for hosting this, to our producer, Glenn Harrison, for getting it out to you. All these talks are available after on YouTube, Facebook, everywhere fine podcasts can be downloaded. I do have a newsletter offered freely. There's a weekly and then intermittent one where I share my photography with you. And all of this is offered by donation. It's all offered freely. In this tradition, no one is to be denied access to these practices and teachings. So just as I've received so much, I offer this out freely. If you ever feel inspired to support this, thank you. You can make a donation through my website. And the next big thing that I'm going to be offering, Tara and I are offering a day-long retreat on December 7th at Catholic University in Washington, D.C. It'll also be streamed online, and it's a topic which I think is pretty relevant. And the topic is, or the title is, Choosing Love in Perilous Times. Should be a really potent retreat if you'd like to join us. Until then, let us start with a meditation. We're going to be exploring tonight the topic of what's called wise view. What is the perspective that puts all these practices in perspective, and what is it that we are practicing for? So in that context, you might close your eyes. Take a few moments and sense how your body might need to move or stretch, if you need to work at any wiggles, any particular tensions. And over this next, it's going to be about 12 minutes. Let's explore what happens when you begin to slow down and direct your attention inward. One of the most powerful ways to set the stage for mindfulness is by bringing attention intimately to the felt sense of your body in the here and now. For me, one of the most potent ways to do this is through a body scan, and I will offer a few suggestions as you practice. Bringing all of your attention and sensing from the inside out, can you feel your forehead now smooth? If you bring your attention to the little muscles around your eyes, is it possible to soften and relax these muscles around the eyes? And again, sensing from the inside out, feel the muscles of the face. Could your face soften? Could you feel your face like the face of a marble statue? If you bring your attention now to the inside of your mouth, what do you feel? Could you relax your jaw and let your jaw just hang a little bit more slack? If you bring your attention to the experience inside your tongue, could you relax your tongue in a way that it fills your lower jaw? And could you track that sense of relaxation that follows? Could you relax the root of your tongue down into your throat? And can you feel or even imagine the space inside your throat? Can you feel from the inside the space inside your lungs as your body breathes? What happens when you soften the diaphragm and soften the belly? How intimately can you feel this movement of the belly rising on the in breath, falling on the out breath? Can you sense now the length and the volume of your arms? And in particular, the inside of the palms, the fingers and thumbs, the volume of your hands. And can you sense now the length and the volume of your legs? And in particular, from the inside out, the soles of the feet and the heels. And you might inquire now, is there anything inside, from the crown of your head down to the soles of your feet, that could relax or soften or let go right now? As you turn your attention to the sounds around you, what do you notice? As you bring your attention to the sense of your body breathing, where do you feel the breath the most predominant right now? You might now very gently shift your attention to focus exclusively on either the sound vibrations or this sense of the breath on the inside. And for these next few minutes, when you notice the mind drifting away, just notice if it's possible to invite your attention back to the vibration of sound or to this felt sense of the breath inside. Every time you notice the mind dominating, it's possible to let go of this thought, to invite your awareness back, to soften inside, and to again experience sounds, experience the breath. If just for a moment, resting deeply in present moment awareness. With just a few minutes remaining, you might explore again right now. How intimately can you feel the sound vibrations, the real time sounds? How intimately can you feel this next breath on the inside? And you might explore now this sense of the foreground and background, the anchor of sound or breath in the foreground, but also widening your awareness now and sensing the background of everything you can perceive that is changing. Relaxing even more and letting your awareness expand to notice what is changing right now. You might now explore shifting your attention yet again, letting go of any sense of trying to make your experience happen, and exploring what it means to let your experience happen, letting go of any effort. How much more could you relax and feel and allow right now? Relaxed and yet at the same time alert. Notice what is changing and sense if it's possible to let it change, to watch the change. Noticing now the quality of presence. Notice if anything has shifted in the last 15 minutes and feeling the space around you. And once again, you might deepen your breath and let your body move and adjust in any way that feels good for you as you begin your transition. And welcome back. This is a classic teaching story of this older man who is a vendor in a marketplace outside the gates of a city. This is a big city with a lot of people coming and going, and travelers would often come to him and ask what the city was like, what it was like on the other side of the walls. One person came up to him one day and said, So tell me about the people. Well, what did they like in this city? And he would respond, well, tell me what they were like where you came from. And this person said, they were they were nasty. They were not trustworthy people. I had to leave because there was an evil quality about them. The old man said, I think you'll find them very much like where you're from. Later, someone came and said, I'm new to the city. What are people like here? And he said, well, tell me what they're like where you come from. And their response was different. They said, well, where I came from, people were really kind. I found people to be very pleasant and very helpful. And the old man said, I think you'll find them very much like where you are from. This is pretty much how we perceive the present moment and the future, all based on our past experiences. This is pretty much the whole talk. So if you want, you can stop here. Thanks for coming. What I'd like to talk about is about the lens that you're looking at through your life. The Buddha famously said, with your thoughts, you make the world. And I'd like to share with you the first of 8 talks. It'll be scattered over the next couple of months on what's called the Eightfold Path. And the Eightfold Path is kind of a map for consciousness. It's a map for awakening. And in this talk, I'll be talking about what's called wise view, which is the overall perspective. It's about setting the compass for your journey. So there are 4 things I'd like to talk about they're so foundational. And each one of them is profoundly transformational. The first one is about understanding karma, understanding action and reaction. The second is the understanding of the 4 underlying principles of Buddhist philosophy, sometimes referred to as the Four Noble Truths. The third is about understanding impermanence and the nature of who you truly, truly are. And the fourth is to talk a little bit about how this journey is not an intellectual journey. It's a journey that is deeply embodied and calls for you to live your life fully. So, a little bit on karma. Have you ever had the experience when you are driving? Someone passes you really fast, they're driving irresponsibly, and then later, further up the road, on the side of the road, you see them pulled over by the police. There's something so sweet about that, to be honest. The deep satisfaction of seeing karma in action. Everything we do has consequences. And when I think about some of the choices I made in my life, deciding to join the Peace Corps, moving into an ashram, moving out of an ashram, getting married, my life has been shaped by not just my decisions, but the actions that have come out of my decisions. Every decision you make in your life, every action you take in your life has ripples. And take a moment and just sense, how have your actions affected your experiences of here and now? Take a moment and sense, just what's one decision that you made that opened up unimaginable life possibilities. On the other hand, you might reflect on a decision you made that maybe has resulted in regret. But there's something inside, I believe, that moves us forward. And that something inside is either motivated through fear and self-preservation or through possibility and expansion. A large part of karma or conditioning is the influence of your parents, your family, your friends, your culture. But in essence, karma is about action and the results of actions. I was trying to think of a good example, and was referencing a memory from a while back. I signed on for this very cool process, which uh, where they analyze your not just your blood work, but also your genetics. I was sitting with the doctor, and he was asking me about my diet. So I told him I make this morning smoothie with a vegan protein powder with MCT oil, which is a version of coconut oil. And I had read that coconut oil was good for me, so I use it all the time everywhere. And the doctor said, you might want to cut out the coconut oil. See, this gene over here says you don't process saturated fats well. And his blood work panel over here shows that your lipids are elevated. So I cut out the coconut oil, and my next blood work, everything came right back into balance. There's kind of a short term and a long term effect of karma. The short term, having coconut oil in my diet had no impact whatsoever. Long term, my lipids were elevated and they were just continued to get more elevated over time. So some actions are very, very subtle, but they can have long term consequences. If you're firing a rocket at the moon and you're off half a degree, by the time that rocket gets to the moon, it's way off course. So aligning your actions becomes critical in your practice. The Buddha allegedly said that every action and every thought, this I shall become. So part of the wise view is about understanding karma, about looking closely at the nature of reality, that every action has a result, a trajectory. So when you begin to notice how your thoughts and your actions actually become the reality you live into, it's huge. As the meditation master Ajahn Chah in the Theravadan tradition said, if you see a little, you'll understand a little. If you see much, you understand much. And reflecting on karma can influence your life dramatically. And so can the next thing I'd like to talk about, which is understanding the four essential principles of Buddhist philosophy. I'd heard the story of someone who noticed a neighbor working on their roof when it was raining. And he called up to his neighbor. He said, "Why are you working on your roof now when it's raining?" And the guy said, "Well, it's leaking." His neighbor said, "Well, why don't you do it when it's sunny?" And the neighbor said, "Well, it's not leaking then." There's a certain simplicity to that response and something lacking, I think, around not connecting the dots. And understanding what's called the Four Noble Truths is around connecting the dots. In essence, when you're stressed, there's a reason for it. If you can find the reason or the cause, you can release it. And if you can release it, you can release other forms of stress as you move through life. The first principle is that suffering is part of life. The second is suffering has a cause. Third is it's possible to let go of suffering. And the fourth is there's a path that can lead to the end of suffering. So, without really seeing and understanding the nature of suffering, we keep repeating patterns. And this word of suffering is, I think, way too broad. The Pali term is dukkha. And dukkha's got a number of nuances. Just to touch on it briefly, because we're kind of at 50,000 feet here. Think of dukkha as stress. Think of it as the inherent dissatisfaction of life, the inherent instability of life. You can think of it as the experience of anguish, of distress, of contraction, of resistance to life. And there are three kinds of dukkha. One of them is referred to as ordinary suffering. And Pali, it's dukkha dukkha. Ordinary suffering. This is physical pain. It's the reality of aging, the reality of sickness, the reality of death. And then there's the suffering that comes from change. It's watching pleasure fade, watching life circumstances change and how you relate to it. And the third is existential suffering. It's the pervasive unsatisfactoriness of all conditioned phenomena. Now, again, we're really pointing toward the essence of things here. And the Buddha said, I teach only two things: suffering and the end of suffering. What would that mean? The end of suffering. What would it mean or feel like to align yourself with these four noble truths, these four principles? Such powerful teachings. There's a story I've often shared of an old monk at the end of his life apologizing to his students. He said, I'm so sorry. I never got beyond the teaching of the Four Noble Truths. And a true teaching is so simple a child can grasp it, and yet it holds a perennial truth. And you can think of it as like a medical doctor diagnosing a problem. First, the doctor diagnoses suffering. There's something here that is inherently dissatisfying, unstable. So you identify the source. The source, you're holding on to something. You're identified to something. You're clinging and you're not letting go. There it is, the source of dissatisfaction. Something you're holding on to. Well, let's move on to the cure. Wow, what if you let this go? What if you let go of the identification? What if you let go of the clinging? What if you let go of the holding on? And then the prescription. And the prescription's kind of intense. How I like to think of it is when the Buddha again allegedly said, nothing whatsoever is to be clung to as I or mine. Nothing whatsoever is to be clung to as I or mine. And when you think about that, the identification as I or mine inevitably leads to some calcification, some holding on. And much of this path is about letting that go. As they say, you let go a little, you'll experience a little bit of freedom, a little bit of space. Let go a lot of freedom, a lot of space. It's so easy to say all this stuff. It's not so easy when you are in the clinch of this tightly bound sense of self, when you are tightly bound up in some element of self-preservation. Another cure, if you will, to the inherent nature of working with dissatisfaction and stress and instability is understanding the nature of impermanence and the nature of who you are as the self, who you truly, truly are. So, impermanence. What is it like to live in a life that is inherently constantly changing? I've been in the meditation business for most of my life now. I started at age 15. I knew right away I'd be doing this for the rest of my life, and so far I have. My personal practice has changed a lot over the years. And one could say at a very, very young age, I was kind of gunning for enlightenment. I found myself into an ashram where I could practice intensively, celibacy vow, poverty vow, a vow of selfless service, austere diet, many, many, many hours of breathing techniques, meditation, chanting, constantly doing personal inventories and processing. And I had a lot of very powerful experiences, amazing experiences. And for many, many years, I was immersed in the world of yoga, doing powerful embodied practices that absolutely changed my state. If you breathe in a certain way long enough, your consciousness is going to shift. If you chant mantras long enough, something's going to happen. A lot of the practices I were doing were willful practices. And I had so many mountaintop experiences. I lived for it. But I noticed after a number of years a kind of a depression coming into my practice, feeling kind of despondent around my practice. Like, why bother? Because I noticed that when I'd have some amazing mountaintop peak experience, inevitably it would slip away. And I realized eventually that my meditation, my yoga, breathing, meditation practice was about chasing lights and rainbows. I was chasing states. And honestly, I regret that I didn't see this sooner. I wish I had grasped earlier how the clinging to those expanded states was resulting in a lot of unhappiness and a lot of dissatisfaction. Because I was young and I had a lot of energy, maybe I had to burn through this sense of doing. Maybe I just had to like blow through this sense of being someone on his way to enlightenment to see more clearly, really, into the nature and the reality of transience. Eventually, we wake up, or we have the illusion of waking up anyway. In the Satipatthana Sutta, which is one of the essential texts, it says that mindfulness, or non judging awareness, reveals three things. It reveals impermanence, or anicca. It reveals unsatisfactoriness, or dukkha. And it reveals not self, or anatta. Joseph Goldstein calls this the liberating power of seeing things as they truly are. Robert Frost summed this up in the very, very short poem called Life. Here's the poem. It changes. When your life doesn't change the way your conditioned mind wants it to, the result, dissatisfaction, unsteadiness, suffering. When your life does change the way your conditioned mind doesn't want it to change, again, unsatisfactoriness, unsteadiness, and suffering. So that brings up a question. What's the way through? Well, there are two things, probably more, but in my simplistic mind, two things. First is seeing it, understanding it. Getting the map of intellectual insight is really, really helpful. The second is, though, that this is not just an intellectual process. It's part of it. It requires that you live it, that you embody this path. And that's the final point I'd like to explore. I've always been an anxious person, much, much less so, but a really super anxious kid and young adult. As a kid, I could never understand why I was so caught up in anticipating what could go wrong in life. I just had this general sense that life is not safe. And only many, many years later did I learn a few things. I learned that my mother lost the child before me during the birth, quite possibly due to lack of oxygen. I learned that she was very, very anxious as she was carrying me. In fact, her doctor made relaxation tapes on a reel-to-reel tape recorder. I also learned that I was born with my umbilical cord wrapped around my neck. And apparently, the whole process was extremely intense. And it was so powerful to understand this because I realized that I was spawned in this amniotic sea of anxiety. And my first impression of life in a body, not safe. Joseph Campbell talks about in The Hero's Journey this line. Above the line is everything you're aware of. Below the line is everything that's unfelt and unseen and undigested. And part of the hero's journey is about moving the line so the unseen can be seen, the unfelt can be felt. And the question becomes, well, what are you? When we talk about not self, what are you? On the one hand, you are an amalgamation of causes and conditions. On the other, you are unconditioned, pure, open awareness. And I might add that while I intellectually got the trauma of my birth, it was only through embodied exploration that I feel I was able to contact and release that trauma, or as much as I was able to. I had to embody it and experience it. I had to relive it in order to relieve it. So again, that question, what are you? You might take a moment if you like, just to close your eyes, and you might take a few breaths. Can you sense the causes and conditions that have formed who you are? The positive impressions, the positive role models in your life, the experience of feeling blessed and touched and graced. Can you sense the causes and conditions that have set up a sense of self-limitation that perhaps are part of the seeds of anxiety in your life? And can you sense now, if just for a moment, the unconditioned quality of awareness right now? A quality of non-judging, bright awareness. Can you imagine now, if just for a moment, who you are without the imprints of all your conditioning? If you like, you might gently open your eyes or remain with them closed. So, given all of this, how do we live? It's important to realize that through these practices, these are reality based practices. They're not optimistic, they're not pessimistic, they're realistic. There's one line that riveted me, again, attributed to the Buddha. The Buddha said, "No one will save you. You have to take full responsibility for your awakening." When I heard that, I experienced two almost simultaneous things. One was kind of liberating. Wow, I feel empowered. The other element was, oh my God, I was hoping someone was going to save me. So this is about suffering and the end of suffering. It's about understanding the nature of karma, how what you think, what you say, and how you act creates outcomes. It's about understanding the nature of suffering and the release of suffering. That stress and dissatisfaction are part of the human experience. That any time that you are in a clench, The cause of that clench has something to do with identification and holding on, clinging. That it's possible to let go. And it's possible to live your life in a way where you can continue to let go and to experience more freedom, more happiness, more wakefulness. It's about recognizing impermanence, recognizing that your relationship to suffering is directly related to your relationship to change. That who you are is the product of conditioning. And at the same time, there's something here about who you are that is unconditioned. Finally, it's about recognizing that this practice is not just about thinking about it. It's about embodied, engaged practice. Recognizing that how you are viewing your life is up for grabs. You can shift the framework. And this framework can set the stage for profound transformation. Let's take just a few moments before we close. If you like, you can close your eyes. Take a few full, deep breaths. Who you are is the product of thoughts, speech, action, the positive impressions, the negative impressions that have formed your sense of what's possible in your life. At the same time, that there is something here that is guiding you forward. Imagine if for a moment your life filled with a greater sense of joy, with a greater sense of possibility, with more ease. And imagine if just for a moment, the more you relax, the more you feel, the more you reflect on what's most important in your life. That your path, your practice becomes ever more enriched, and you may feel more and more guided from within. As you're ready, you can gently deepen your breath. If you like, you can open your eyes. And thank you so much for your time and attention. Thank you for this romp through Wise View. And blessings to you and how you feel called in your practice.